All right, welcome back to another episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Reynolds from Sanger PD in California. He has 34 years experience in law enforcement. Welcome to the show, Chief Reynolds. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Paige. Honored to be here.
I'm really excited. I think that this is going to be a great conversation. I was hoping that we could start with a little bit of background on you. For anyone who's listening who doesn't know who you are, give us a little bit of background.
Sure. So, hitting my 34th year of law enforcement this coming in 2026. Um, Started out at a small agency not too far from Sanger and did about 3.5 years there before making the lateral move over to the Fresno County Sheriff's Office. And that was my home for the last 29 years. So, recently retired, found myself in a position where I had 29, was going for that 30th, but I had a whole year of annual leave or vacation time saved up, and an opportunity came within one of the agencies in our county, Sanger, for a chief of police position. Weighed things out, met with the sheriff, got his support, and made the leap, cashed in my vacation, and started a new chapter in June. So only been here since June of this year. Um, Had a lot of opportunity. That 29 years was chock full of opportunities for. I did about 20 years on our bomb squad there. Did the detective stuff, did the undercover stuff, did the things that took me away from family. Probably one of those regrets that we'll get into later. But just had it, I just have this mindset where if somebody goes into a career and has 30 years and doesn't experience all the opportunities that are there, they've really missed out. So I've been put in a position where I did promote to corporal, then to sergeant, and moved around different detective positions, eventually lieutenant, different commands throughout the department that really prepped me into that captain's role at the sheriff's office, is what I retired out of, and gave me an opportunity and launched me, springboarded me into this position ready to go.
Do you think that you always wanted to be in a position of leadership, or how did you get to where you are today?
All right. Like so many probably others that have been in this seat before me, this was not even on my radar.
Mm,
When you start, or when I started, I wanted one thing. I wanted to be a police dog handler. That was it. And I thought that that's what I would probably be for the rest of my career. And then an injury took me out of that and put me into a detective position. And I thought, wow, this is a whole new world. I never want to leave this. And then the first opportunity for a lead officer, promotion to corporal, and I thought, well, this is a good position. I never want to leave this. So there was a tremendous amount of I'm never going to leaves. And I found myself in a position like others probably have, promotional opportunities. We've worked for good bosses, we've worked for bad bosses. We know what we want to emulate, we know who we don't want to work for, and it's time to make the leap and try to promote so I don't have to work for that competitor that we all know is toxic. Um, and then just time evolved and went on, and it's like next thing you know, I'm way further along in the career rank structure than I ever even imagined or wanted.
yeah.
This was never my end game.
You know what's so interesting is all the things that I told myself throughout my life that I would never do and then ended up doing were always some of the best opportunities for me to learn and to grow. And I think that sometimes we do kind of put ourselves in these nice little boxes of like, okay, this is my comfort zone, this is what I'm going to do. And then you sometimes are forced to step out of that comfort zone a little bit. And, sometimes that's scary, or sometimes it's, uncharted waters that you never thought you would be in. And then you find yourself growing and learning even more than you thought was possible. And I have my own personal opinion on this, but I want your opinion on, do you think that learning different roles and having a forward trajectory helps with wellness and longevity?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's uh, every position that I've been in, I could either have like rebelled against it, which is going to be an internal stressor, or I
Mm.
can say, okay, what now? And so that's the question I would say to anybody that is facing change, and even with as it relates to wellness, is what now? This circumstance is here. What do I do with it? And for me, I've been given a lot of assignments that I think are crummy assignments, and but it's like when you're given lemons, make lemonade, right? And I did that, and every time that I've done that, it's an attitude. And when I make it into something better, it's better for my wellness. It's better for those around me because our wellness is contagious. I think we shed it to other people's. So absolutely, and I've been given those opportunities, and a lot of them were crummy assignments that just ended up, as I look back and connect all the dots, prepared me for the next step.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you said prepared you for the next step because that's the way that I see it. It's like laying the foundation for where you're going to go next. And I really believe that our mindset is one of the things that we can control. You might not be able to control everything or a lot, really. There's a lot of things that we can't control. And like you
Right,
said, maybe you felt like you got kind of tossed into a crummy assignment and maybe you didn't have a lot of control over that, but your mindset and how you step into that role is something that you can control, and you can use that as a growth opportunity for yourself. And I love that you said, attitude is contagious. And I think that there's two sides of that coin. If you have a really bad attitude, that is contagious and that spreads. And then the reverse is also true. If you have a positive attitude and you're like, you know what, I'm going to make lemonade right now and I'm going to be the best person that's ever been in this crummy assignment ever.
right,
I'm going to excel and I'm going to soak it all in, and then the next thing I do, I'm going to do the same thing. That is also contagious.
right, absolutely.
I want to know, what does leadership mean to you? What do you think are the qualities that make a good leader?
So leadership to me is, and probably a more textbook answer is the
Mhm.
ability to influence others to accomplish a mission, right? For what makes a good leader, I look at and I subscribe to the Army's Be No Do philosophy on leadership. And it's comprised of attributes and competencies. Attributes, your character, your presence, and your intellect, your character being your values, your ethos, what you bring to the table, your core beliefs. And that can be whether it's religious or faith based, or if you're in the military, they're going to assign you values. If you come to the Sanger Police Department, we're going to assign you our values as well. And we expect you to internalize those and make them real, make them yours, not just memorize them. That presence is how you show up, that bearing. When you show up on a call, do you look good in uniform? As a leader, do you represent the department so that others respect that? How do you speak? That is important. In our intellect, we're looking at our judgment, our expertise, and that goes to a leader. That's the foundation for me, and that's the foundation for the Army as well. If you can get those things laid down correctly, then the competencies are the following three, and that's our leading, that's our developing, and that's our achieving. And are we leading? Are we delegating to other people? Are we knowing when to step in and when to step back? Developing, are we self-developing? Are we reading? Are we staying up on case law? Are we looking at different ways to move into the future? AI being a key one of those now, and then developing our people. Are we willing to develop our people to make them better than us?
Mm.
Swallow our pride, and that's like what any parent wants is their child to be better than them. We have to be willing to prepare our successors better than what we are for the future, and then the results, the achieving comes naturally. Wrap all those attributes and competencies in, and that's a good leader. And I think it's something that can be developed too. So anybody can look at any of these and go, I need work in this area and that area. And you'll find that a lot of these, when you apply work, it crosses the bridge into the other slices of the pie, so to speak, and you're going to be more well rounded.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting that you said you think it can be developed because I've had this conversation a few times now, and I think there's kind of like a 50-50 split, whether it's nature or nurture or both. And so
Right.
you have the opinion that anyone can develop the skills to be an effective leader, that it's more nurture, maybe a little bit of
Yes.
nature, but there is a nurture element to it.
Sure, and there's natural born leaders and how you're raised, and like I mentioned prior to this call, that I'm a little brother, so the big brother always took the lead on a lot of stuff. But even in the military setting at officer candidate school, we can put people in an incubator and force the leadership to come out and develop it, and that's what the Army does over and over again.
Yeah. Well, and I also think that it's, regardless of what position you have within the organization or what career you have, I think that we can all still have that mindset of how can we develop ourselves to improve all of those areas that you mentioned before. How can we take it upon ourselves to try to be the best versions of ourselves? And I think that burnout and that we see people leaving certain situations early because there isn't that growth. I think that stagnation. I know people maybe think that this is morbid, but I have this, motto that if you're not growing, you're dying. And it's this idea that like stagnation is the death of all good things, right? You don't want to like be stuck in one area, that we want to keep growing and developing ourselves. And I don't think that you have to wait until you have a particular position to start trying to develop yourself early.
No, we should be developing. In fact, every new officer that sits in the office before me, the first day they're hired, we talk about this whole be no do concept, and
Mhm.
they're a leader. They're a lead when they're handling a call for service or a traffic stop or something. They're the leader on the call,
Yeah.
until somebody else steps in and assists them with higher rank or knowledge or training and experience. But it's important for them, and I tell them, hey, you need to. You don't know what you don't know, so we're going to give you some things, but you're going to be expected to participate in your own development.
Yeah. So and I know you mentioned this before, but you entered into this existing agency back in June. So it's been maybe about what, 6, 7 months?
Yeah, less than that now, just hitting my fifth. Yep.
Yeah, 5 months. And I know that you kind of entered into maybe a challenging environment. Can you give us a little bit of insight into kind of the culture and the environment that you stepped into, when you came in June?
Yeah, so I entered in at the tail end of a couple of different things that were going on. An officer with this agency had just been convicted of multiple sexual assaults while under the color of authority on duty. That was a big hit to the agency and the community. That's only 26,000 people. We had seen the departure of a chief of police, an assignment of an acting, followed by an immediate um, placement of that acting chief on administrative leave for a separate investigation, and a very tumultuous environment with leadership all the way down to the rank and file. The officers, many of them on administrative leave pending disciplinary issues, and people striving, or basically, better word for it be craving a leader to come in and take over.
Yeah. And so you were selected for this position to come in and, try to help with um, changing and developing the culture. And I know when you and I talked offline, you talked a little bit about, trust and maybe people not knowing who to trust or what to do. And so can you give a little bit of insight into how wellness has played a role into what you're doing organizationally, how you're trying to rebuild that trust and rebuild, a solid foundation for a more positive culture?
So transparency is something we expect with the community. The community expects to know everything that we're doing, and we have to have that transparency. There are things that are confidential within the agency that only get to certain ranks. That's everybody accepts that. But everybody needs to know and be on the same page. And that promotes trust and reduces stress. And so one of the first things that I had to do when I came in here is probably what many other chiefs of police do is set the expectations,
Mm.
set the ground rules. And I have found that having expectations and holding people accountable does not create stress. It reduces stress. And if people know what's expected of them and reinforce our mission to serve the people and our values, hey, this is how we're going to be with the people of the community. Because when these officers are launched out after training, they're out with blue flames trying to just arrest everybody they can and forgetting that out of a population of 26,000 people, they're not all bad people. Overwhelmingly, the community loves and supports the police department here. So that's an important takeaway, and the officers need to know that. But when we start talking about accountability, we have department policies and procedures we need to adhere to. Those are there so that we can carry out the mission and have the trust of our people of the community. They understand when I took this role that we're to gain the trust of the population of our citizens every single day we go out.
Yeah.
Uh, and if they don't meet the standard, then they're going to be held accountable. And that doesn't mean their head's going to be lopped off. And that doesn't mean as soon as I come into the door and I have these sheriff's office expectations from where I've been, everybody that doesn't meet that expectation gets their head lopped off. It
Hmm.
means recognize that there's some growth that needs to occur. So I got to develop people, and that included my command staff. We needed to get together so that they can see things through my paradigm, so they know my vision and my accountability, where my standards are, so that they can then relate that down the chain. And that involved me meeting with sergeants and officers, and not delegating to officers and skipping a chain of command, which is I think is important, but it means communicating down that chain of command and being transparent with everybody. I would say an open door policy, and that open door policy is to have conversation, not skip the chain of command. It's not an excuse to go around, circumvent, but as well as officers knowing that I'm not running and gunning for everybody because they were running scared. It was not uncommon for an allegation of misconduct to come in on an officer. The officer would just be put on administrative leave, not told why, and then the investigation is conducted. Now you have shifts working short of their manpower, and oftentimes for allegations that aren't of severe moral turpitude or things that would disqualify them as a police officer. It's stuff that could be investigated while they work. Most of them are not sustained anyway. And so by changing up that process and telling them, hey, look, this is how we're going to do business. If you are subject of investigation, you'll be notified when it's time. If it's serious, you'll be put off. If it's not, you'll be left in play. And that right there, knowing that what the ground rules are, you can't help the person who's going to step out of bounds on purpose. That person's probably going to go down a rabbit hole that hopefully we can get them back from. But for general purposes, most of the allegations we have are minor in nature, and people know that they don't have to look over their shoulder at this point. And it's increased wellness because we have the stress of making the arrest with the bad guys. We have all the outside stresses of life. We don't need to give them that extra piece of stress that they don't need from an agency at an administrative level. We can avoid that.
Yeah. One of the things that you said that I really liked, and I was telling you this offline a little bit, and you said it a little bit just now, but you said when you give people the expectations, that they will rise up to those expectations.
Yes.
And I really have always believed that. I really think that, and I'm not saying set crazy unrealistic expectations for people, but I have found that in my personal life and in my professional life, which, is obviously different from your professional life, but I have found that when you set expectations, and I do think that expectations should be high. We should hold ourselves at a really high standard, right? And it's not
Yes.
unattainable or unachievable, but it's a high standard that the people, especially the people who you want to be in your corner, like those are the people who are going to rise to those
Yes.
expectations. And when everybody is held to that same standard, I do think that it's inspiring. It's like we're all in it together and we're all going to be, expected to be at the same level. I think that when there's kind of this, um, blurring of the lines, or like some people are held to a high standard and others aren't, that's when the kind of that disconnect, starts to happen. So I really do, um, follow that same mindset that like if you set the standard, people will follow.
I think when you're looking at law enforcement in general, it's already under scrutiny of the public. But how hard is professionalism?
Mm-hmm.
If that's the standard, professional, be professional. That goes back to that attribute,
Mm-hmm.
presence. Be professional, strive for excellence. We're always trying to get better and have integrity, and then accountability, whether that's you messed up, we're going to help you get back in line, or you recognize you messed up and you're going to fix it. And sometimes we as administration may never know it's fixed. Great. You hit the bumper and you recognize you needed to get back in line, whether it's home life or professional life. And well done. It's not hard.
Yeah.
It's just not.
I think that a lot of people find that hard. Like from my experience, of like taking that accountability, it's really interesting. But I kind of relate this to sports, like a sports team. You see accountability on the field all the time, where like they drop the ball and they're like, that was on me.
Right.
And then you can see them really, really trying to like have that like correction later, because they don't want to be the one that fumbles the ball twice. Because that,
Right.
that doesn't look good, right? So I think that sometimes um, there's, again, it goes back to what we talked about before. It's like there's growth in the mistakes too, like if we
Sure.
trip and fall a little bit, or if, maybe we make a small mistake, it's not, hopefully it's a mistake that can be corrected, and I'm not talking about something super,
Right.
super severe. I'm talking about like the small little things that we do. You know, I think we're so afraid to make mistakes and we don't want people to know that we made these mistakes. But in
Sure.
my experience, some of those little like, fumbles are what make you even stronger and better long term.
I fumbled. We, I think if we're honest, we all have.
Yeah.
I've set my I've sat in the hot seat. 34 years. It wasn't all roses, right? And I learned lessons, and there was lumps along the way that kept me in line. So
Yeah.
and that gives me some empathy when I'm dealing with my people.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we could have probably an entire podcast episode where you and I just go back and forth on how many times we fumbled the ball. I continue to this day, like I've will do presentations and or whatever, and I'll come out of it and be like, man, that was a flop, or whatever. And I think that the resilience is how do you keep going? How
Right.
how do you get up? How do you dust yourself off? How do you figure out how you can learn and grow? And then how do you do that again? Like how do you do,
Right.
how do you like, and I'm using a super simple example, how do you, after maybe bombing a presentation in front of 200 people, how do you dust yourself off, learn, and then grow, and then get back in front of another group of 200 people and do it again? I think that's the resilience. I'm
I
curious.
think I heard it said from it was Lieutenant General Hal Moore, and United States Army. And he said it's strike three and you're not out. There's
Mm,
always going to be another opportunity. This is not a baseball game with 9 innings and we're done. It's a life. It's a career, and you're going to be at bat again. So
I love that. Strike three and you're not out. That's great. I wanted to ask you, I know that part of what you're doing right now within your organization is really trying to build culture.
yes,
I was thinking about this earlier today as I was kind of preparing for the podcast, and we talk a lot about these different pillars of wellness. We talk about physical, mental, emotional, financial, all the different pillars, spiritual. Um, but there's been a common thread through a lot of the conversations that I've had with leaders like yourself, where we talk about the importance of culture and how much that impacts wellness. Do you think that culture is a pillar of wellness?
I do. People people are going to melt. People in this law enforcement agency specific, just keeping in mind my agency. Um, it's a family, and we have a mission, and we have to accomplish this mission together. It's and using another army, mission first, soldiers always. When we're making a decision, it's mission first. We got to do our mission to the people, but we take care of ourselves as well. And by doing that and having that mindset, we are taking care of ourselves as a family and making sure we get home after the shift, making sure the call is handled right, making sure when one of us has something go wrong at home, somebody's reaching out and making contact with that member of the department to check on their status. We are absolutely blessed at this agency because we have, number one, like most agencies or a lot of agencies, we have physical fitness reimbursement and the ability to work out. But we also have mental health co-responders as a contract with the county that are assigned to our city and are housed in our agency, in our department. And it's so these um, mental health co-responders respond with our officers out to calls involving those that might be suffering some type of crisis. But it's oftentimes in their office that my officers are sitting with them as well. And they have just totally indoctrinated themselves into our culture. They're our family. We have a chaplain who's trained in critical incident stress management. It's every day that an officer is in the office just shooting the breeze, and maybe sometimes the door is closed.
Mm.
And that's a culture that I walked into actually. That pre-existed me. I can't accept any accolades for that. But it absolutely our community, our culture is a pillar.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is the first time I've talked about this on the podcast because, one of the best things that I have found through having these conversations is you guys challenge me to think about things in different ways, and I think that's kind of the beauty of having different perspectives and different walks of lives is, really trying to understand, how other people are doing things and how they think and I was thinking about that today. I'm like, wow, maybe through all these conversations that we have and we talk about the pillars of wellness, maybe culture is a, key component to what, that holistic view really is for an organization.
And it has to be healthy if we're going to do the mission to the people. If
Mhm.
we're not even healthy inside, how are we going to go out and really protect and serve? So it's critical.
Yeah. I'm curious, and you haven't told me this yet, but as I was kind of preparing, I'm really curious. What is your why? Why is wellness so important for you as a person and as a leader?
I think, like many of us have been in the position where we've faced, you don't go through a career of 34 years or even 20 years plus without losing people along the way. That's the why.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
On duty, off duty. I think everybody has a suicide story. Everybody has a line of duty death story. Everybody has a cancer story. It impacts you at every level from different angles, and it's critical. And that's definitely my why.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
You and I talked a little bit about, and I know obviously wellness is something that's important to you, and we talked about how wellness is a part of safety. how do you think that wellness can keep people safe in their careers and in their lives and create that longevity?
I think the longevity wellness piece is balance. It's a healthy work, home, and life balance. This is this is a career. If you're in this, this is not somebody that's going into military service for 4 years and then jumping out and starting another career. It's not a job. It's a calling. It's a career. I've heard it said before. It's a marathon. And if you're going to run this long race and survive it, you have to recognize, and it's easier said than done, that there's going to be opportunities. You don't got to do it all today. And I think for me, I put my job first for many years. The call out, the adrenaline, the surveillance, the midnight operation, the drug raids going through the doors, adrenaline. I was an adrenaline junkie that worked undercover buying narcotics, and and I will say that I still am surrounded by family, but I lost my family. I lost my, I resulted in a divorce, 18 years into my career. And, maybe if I had that a certain component of this, I would have, you go back and you have regrets. I'm in a good place now, obviously, but you look back and it's like, boy, if certain pieces were in place, if certain people were in place, maybe this would be different. And I think that home life, whether that's church, hobbies, friends that you started with outside of law enforcement, because you tend to go and gravitate those who are thinking similar to you. Law enforcement becomes law enforcement friends, and you start down that road where everybody else doesn't relate to you. I say that's just absolutely, I cherish my outside law enforcement friends now.
Mhm.
I would say those friends as long as they're doing legal stuff,
Mhm.
and don't forget them. Stay involved because it'll help you survive the long run.
Yeah, I can relate. Obviously, I come from a different background than in different career than you, but I can relate to a lot of the things that you said. And they're some of my biggest regrets too. Um,
Right,
you know, Sacrificing family in the pursuit of a career
right,
and not understanding that, for me, it was like, if I'm not there, everything falls apart. um, Maybe thinking that I was more important than I actually was in those moments. And
yes,
now, they say hindsight is 2020 for a reason, like you have
right,
different perspectives once you kind of zoom out a little bit or you step back a little bit. And I realized that those things that I prioritized, for my career over my family really were so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. But in that moment, I thought they were the most important thing, and everything would crumble without me. And um, my hope through these conversations is that there are one other people who can relate and understand that they're not alone in that feeling of I wish, but also the younger men and women who are working in this career, to maybe learn a little bit from people who have, gone through it before, and,
right,
hopefully get to the end of their career with fewer I wish statements. And
right,
I think to your point of what you said before of, trying to surround yourself with the best people and a diverse group of people with, different perspectives and insights. And I think that what we tend to do is surround ourselves, and maybe this is just my experience, but surround ourselves with people who aren't going to call you out on certain behaviors, and so I think having people with different perspectives and people who are going to ground you and also call you out on your BS, like if you're like that, there's so much value in that. I have learned
right,
so much, not from the people who just agree with me and have the same perspective as me, but from people who are going to grab my shoulders and shake me a little bit and be like, hey, like you're messing up, or, you're changing, or whatever that is. And so I agree with you. I think that there are things that, and I think two things can be true at once. I think that you can prioritize your job. I think that you can put 110% into your career, but it's not all or nothing. I think that you can also do the same thing in your personal life. And I
Yes.
think sometimes we convince ourselves that it's one or the other.
I think we just fall into that. You said having that person that's going to shake you and hold you accountable. That's critical. And um, I'm sure there's plenty of nighttime surveillances that would have been just fine without John being there to be a part of it. So absolutely. Was it fun? Yes. There was fun times. There was hard times. Um, but yeah, regrets.
Yeah, I also think that it's kind of a double-edged sword. I've had a lot of time to think about this because would I change it now? Would I have spent more time with those people who are now no longer on this earth, and I chose my career over, family on their deathbed in that time? Like, yes, 100%. Like I would have changed that. But at the same time, it's hard because, the work ethic that you had helped you to get to where you are today,
True.
and so I've had a lot of that kind of like back and forth of, would I be where I am today without that same sacrifice and work ethic? And again, I think my conclusion to that is I think that, yes, I think that you can still have both. And
Yes.
unfortunately, I didn't do that. I didn't have that balance. And so I agree with you. I think it's balance. Balance can be hard. Balance doesn't mean that it's always equal. Some things kind of fall out of balance, but I do think that you can have it all.
Right. You can. And I think your personality is probably similar to mine. Very driven and new idea, run with it, go with it. And I still do that today. I come up with new uh, concepts that I want to push out. And sometimes I have to hit the pause button because um, the missus at home now wants my time, needs my time, and I recognize that. It's like, yes, that'll be there for tomorrow, and let's go have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Someone told me the other day, and this really like kind of made me step back a little bit. They said wellness is about boundaries. And I was like, wow, okay, that hit deep because I'm so guilty to what you just said. Like I'm like, yes, 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 go, go, go. And sometimes wellness is about like taking a pause, taking a step back, pushing it off till tomorrow or next week. Sometimes it's having those boundaries because you will burn yourself out. You can't
yes,
run at 1,000% every single day. Sometimes you
yeah,
have to have boundaries to be able to prioritize things that really matter, which is, time with your friends and family.
right,
Sometimes it's just rest. Like that is really important too. And it's really hard for us to do when, especially if someone's like type A, like, always going. I did want to touch on this topic before we wrap for the day. But, I was thinking about this. You and I talked about how wellness can play a role into officer safety. And you said this earlier, kind of broken within, broken without. And we talked a little bit about, your mind and your body are essentially like they're tools and they're essentially kind of like your own equipment if you think about it this way, right? And if you have better equipment, right? If you feel better physically and mentally and you have better equipment, then this builds more confidence and then more confidence equals safety. And I've asked this question a few times. I'm really curious in your opinion. Do you think that wellness, this idea of wellness, will ever just be training? Like it's just a part of training, of safety training, viewing your body and your mind as a tool and a piece of your personal equipment.
I think we don't have a choice but to look at it like this. Um, there's grants, there's training, there's um, I I know that having just come from the sheriff's office, they had a wellness person assigned to their agency just to get people in the right place so that they're healthy. And it's not just physical. You're right. It's physical and mental. Um, I think they're probably, if they aren't, and I should probably know the answer to this, whether they're preaching it in the police academies already or not. But this should be standard issue. Now you can tell them, and there's a lot of people that will preach it. There's a lot of books. Dr. Gil Martin, Emotional Survival, fantastic. Wish I had read that years prior. And those type of things that are pushed out in to new officers in the field training program. Here, you need to read this book with your spouse or significant other. Issued equipment absolutely should be. The results with divorces, suicides, people, the injuries. You're not in the right headspace. You're going to get yourself hurt, other people hurt. Um, yeah, I 100% on board with you. It should be just a standard issue. Uh, and no size, it's not a one size fits all because how we receive it depends on where we are in our life, in our headspace at that point. But the information has to be pushed out. And then when somebody doesn't feel like they need it, it has to be there for when they do need it.
Mm. I like that you said that because, I think sometimes there's this attitude of like, well, we don't think our people will use it, or, oh, like, we know for sure this one guy, they're always like pointing at like the one guy, like, we know for sure they'll never, ever, ever do any of this kind of stuff. And I think my argument to that is maybe not.
Right.
Maybe they won't. Um, But what if they do? What if they do need it? What if there is a time, maybe not today, but maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's next week, and now something happens where someone needs something. You want to be proactively prepared for the best case and the worst case scenarios always,
Right.
right?
Right.
And to your point, it's not a one size fits all. What's the plan A, plan B, plan C? Like, what are all the different things, because I think we've all been there before where, I've said plenty of times, I'll never do that. And then I end up doing it because there are situations that call for that. And so I think,
Yes.
being as proactive as possible, introducing this as early as possible. I think awareness and education are really important. And then the action piece is, obviously going to look different for everybody, but um,
Absolutely.
at least having something in place so that if and when people need it, they have it.
And those that use it, those who embrace the concept, they become ambassadors for it
Mhm.
automatically. It goes back to attitudes contagious. So is wellness. So if everybody else around you is focusing on it, there was that stigma. I don't need counseling. I'm strong. I'm a cop. It's looked down upon. Those days are well in the past. And I can think of some PTSD counselors, one specifically that I had been introduced to, and I would refer officers to. Uh, Years, I would refer officers to this doctor, and she would say, "Thank you. Have them call me. When are you coming to see me?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, soon enough." And then another year would go by, and another three referrals, and then finally, I hit my place where it was like, "Hey, doctor, this one's for me."
Mm.
So uh, and it's like you become an ambassador when you use wellness, when you embrace wellness on all levels. We're talking the physical, spiritual, emotional, getting everything dialed in together holistically. You become that ambassador.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that that is the best way to create momentum is when people benefit from it and other people see it.
Yes.
And I've done this in my life before where like I've tried so hard to get people to do things, and people aren't going to do things unless they want to do things
Yes.
usually, right? But by you setting an example of like, well, I'm just going to do it for me and I'm going to show them the benefits that I'm seeing, then people will follow that. And I think that's how you build trust too. When other people have positive experiences, especially when we start talking about talk therapy and, people thinking, it's going to be reported back and, all the things. When you have other people have positive experiences and that doesn't happen, then there starts to build that trust.
Right.
I know you shared earlier your why and why wellness is so important to you, and you touched on losing people. And I'm curious, how do you get people to not only self-assess and maybe look for signs within themselves, but how do you encourage other people to look out for each other, to try to identify some of those signs and symptoms within, their peers, so that people who are struggling, are getting the support that they need?
Well, it starts with conversation, and that's the conversation piece is critical because we all have our spheres of influence, whether it's family, friends, or coworkers. So specifically in our coworkers, we have our baselines. Everybody, whether it's locker room briefing or out debriefing after a call, we all know our baseline, and so it's very easy to recognize when something's off with one of our partners. And that's what we focus on. It's like, hey, if something's not right, engage that person and find out what's wrong if they're willing to talk to you. There's the amount of times that two patrol cars are parked opposite with two officers just exchanging information. I get complaints. I would often get complaints from members of the community. Why are their officers parked here? They're not driving around patrolling. And it's like, I'll cover for them because they're debriefing. And that could be two officers sharing some very intimate, private conversation about a call they were just on and the stress. That could be the creditors that are calling and wanting money. That could be the potential divorce or relationship issue going on. And those are conversations that need to be had. That's where we prevent somebody from going off the rails with those conversations. So care for one another's mission first, soldiers always.
Yeah.
Pay attention. Say something. If you're not getting a result and that person's not listening to you, say something. Our goal would be to get somebody off that pathway so that they are well in the mind, so they can be productive.
Yeah. Yeah, I was having a conversation about this recently, and this idea that some people are afraid to ask the questions or to have those conversations because they're afraid that, that person might be upset with them, or, and
Yes.
I think that everyone agrees that you would rather have the conversation and have someone be upset with you in that moment than to not have the conversation and something happen. And I saw something recently that I thought was really powerful, and it's to your point of, having conversations. They said that there's science that proves that 13 minutes of conversation can save someone's life. And it was in the context of suicide. It was someone who was, contemplating. They said 13 minutes of conversation is all it takes to potentially save someone's life. And I thought that was really powerful because how many times do we have a 13-minute conversation with somebody? You know, m-
Right.
I mean, maybe you don't have them every day with every person, but when you're having those debriefs, is that 13 minutes? Are you taking the time to sit with someone in briefing for 13 minutes and talk to them? To your point, there's these opportunities to sit down and have meaningful conversations so that, people understand that they're supported and they're valued and that they matter.
Yeah. That's an interesting number. That's I'm probably now going to have to put that in play as a strategy. So
We're setting a timer.
yes,
You're not
yes.
getting up from this chair until you stare in my eyes for 13 minutes.
13, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I have to look up like the science and the research behind it, because I like to nerd out on those things and like actually see where that science came from. But I saw that video and they were talking about suicide prevention, and I thought that was
Right.
really interesting.
Yes.
My final question for you is for the younger officer, someone who's earlier in their career. What words of wisdom would you share with them? Maybe something you wish you would have known or something that's helped you along the way.
First thing I would say is get a mentor. Get a mentor who's well established and respected, who's been doing this for a while now, 10 years, 15 years plus, because you're going to learn from that person. I think everybody should have a mentor. Um, find a partner. This is kind of going to go um, um, maybe biblical here, but everybody should have a Paul, a Barnabas, and a Timothy. Paul, somebody that's a mentor that you're going to look up to. Timothy, or I'm sorry, a Barnabas, a good friend that you can bounce your ideas off of. Iron sharpens iron, and then somebody you're going to turn around and mentor as well. The second thing I would say is I've already mentioned it. You got to pace yourself. This is a marathon, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity, depending on the size of your agency, of course, but just pace yourself and get the work life balance. And you're going to have a long standing career and you're going to be valued and have value to give to somebody else.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you
Thank you,
coming
Paige.
on here with me and sharing all the great things that you're doing and your insights. I really appreciate your time.
I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. This was an honor.
Yeah, of course. It was so much fun and I'll have to keep in touch and see how things go along the way. You know, maybe at the
Great.
1 year mark, see how things are going. So thank you.
Right. Yes. Thank you.